Well, Razorback fans, let's talk about the debate, the biggest debate of them all. You know, the thing that everyone's talking about right now. Well, mostly everybody dealing with Razorback sports here on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I'm also the host of the John Neighbors Show, which you can catch every weekday afternoon from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and depending on when I do it, but it's live on Natty State Sports and nattystatesports.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more because as playoffs wind down, the sport stops sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody, every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday. We finally made it. Finally made it to Friday. Got the weekend ahead of us. And to be honest, it's kind of slow in the sports world for the Razorbacks, but everyone's talking about the debate. So let's talk about the presidential debate and what I thought really played out there. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that to anybody, and I don't think anybody wants that right now. But I don't know. I like kind of having stuff to where, again, people who are talking about everything in life and pop culture and all of that, sometimes to try to have some sort of correlation, some sort of relation to Razorback sports, because I don't know. I just feel like it could be pretty fun to do. And who knows, maybe I'll do it on my show today as well. But it got me thinking about some of the arguments and some of the convincing that some Razorback fans do to either other Razorback fans or to other programs, to other places, to other states, to other sports, whatever it is. There's always constant arguments going on. I mean, that's what's really sports is all about. Sports is about the playing of the sports by the athletes and then the debating and arguing and trash talking by the fans to each other. Like that's kind of the role, and it's always been that way, and it always will be that way. But to be able to have debates, it usually has to come from somewhere. Like you have to have some sort of reasoning behind why you feel so strongly about it or whatever, because I could be wrong about this. I don't think I am. But usually people don't argue. They don't debate. They don't get fired up. They don't get emotionally invested unless they're defending or talking about something they truly care about. You know, we see it in politics, but we also see it with religion. We see it with pretty much everything in life, and sports is no different. I mean, there's been a lot of shows made basically and successful off a debate. I mean, First Take. I mean, that's how it became so successful, is they just yell at each other all the time. And it's Razorback fans, you kind of do that the same way. I mean, I know I have. And I think Razorback fans, whether it's within your own party of your own fan base, but also with other people too. So I started thinking about what are the things that I think Razorback fans debate the most, or like the thing that always gets debated about the most. And I wanted to do both within the fan base and also outside the fan base. And I'll start within the fan base because it's the easiest one. To me, the two things that have been the most hotly debated things in all of Razorback sports among Razorback fans have been these two things. The great stadium debate, whether or not to play in Razorback Stadium or in War Memorial Stadium in certain games, and Arkansas versus Arkansas State. Those are the two things that Razorback fans have debated among themselves for a very, very long time. And ironically enough, next year, you're going to have both of those things coincide at the same time. But it's also going to be the only time it ever happens. And starting with the great stadium debate, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because we all kind of know about it. But the reason that one was always so heated was because of how it started. Like it was tough to get out of where it was. And the reason that Arkansas had to play so many games, in fact, most seasons they played more games in Little Rock than they did in Fayetteville, was because War Memorial Stadium had lights and Razorback Stadium did not. So in order to get night games, in order to do that, you had to play somewhere that had lights. And from there into the beginning, and then just as it grew, that was the problem. And then over time, less and less games were pulled out of Little Rock, and more games were put into Fayetteville because it became a money thing. The facilities, obviously, in Fayetteville became elevated to another level, and people just didn't want to let go of it because it was so convenient for those in Central Arkansas and in the Southern Arkansas area to be able to drive into Little Rock. And also, you know, during that time, it was kind of difficult to get to Fayetteville. You basically had to go up the pig trail in order to get from the Central Arkansas area up to Fayetteville. Well, now that's not the case anymore. You take I-40 to I-49, and boom, they're there in 2.5 hours from Little Rock. So that's kind of gone by the wayside. It's not near as much debated as it once was, mainly because it's over with. You know, like, you don't debate anything. It's done. Like, everything's moving on. That Arkansas is not going to play in War Memorial Stadium after 2025. So it's a futile thing to debate. But the other thing, of course, dealing with Arkansas and Arkansas State, you're going to have that for the very first time in the history of these programs happening in 2025 in War Memorial Stadium. Now, to make sure that everyone's clear on this, the only reason that you had those particular things happening not this upcoming, but the next season, and having it in War Memorial Stadium was because, stupidly, since you only get 4 SEC home games a year, there were years where Arkansas got 2 SEC games in Fayetteville because one of their home games was technically in Arlington at AT&T Stadium, and the other one was in War Memorial against Missouri. So that was absurd, and that was killing recruiting. It was killing everything. But that was the contract that had been signed originally, I believe under the Jeff Long administration, for Arkansas, and the agreement that they had where, if I'm not mistaken, it was every other year you either had, if you had Missouri at home, you'd play them in Little Rock, or if you did play Missouri on the road that year, you'd have the spring game in Little Rock. So that's how that was set. But that's how people kind of looked at it and kind of viewed it as like, okay, well, that's dumb. Got to get rid of that. But War Memorial's like, hey, hold on a second. Like, you owe us something, though. Like, you're taking away money from us. You're taking away our opportunities. You're taking away an SEC game. What are you going to do? And the only way that they could amend the contract was to kind of really throw a bone and say, well, how about we play Arkansas State? The game that they've always wanted, the game that they've wanted, I mean, since the beginning of time. And we'll play it there. If you give the other SEC games up to us here in Fayetteville, we'll play that game in 2025. Deal? Deal. So that's how it was made. Now, I'm hate to burst anyone's bubble about this, but I'm going to be very direct and very clear and very blunt. Folks, when Arkansas plays Arkansas State in War Memorial Stadium in 2025, that will be the last Razorback football game that will be held in War Memorial Stadium for the foreseeable future. There could be a one-off here and there, but as far as the consistency and the frequency of that game being in War Memorial, that's done. That'll be over with in 2025. Never again. And that'll also be the only time Arkansas ever plays Arkansas State. Because, as I have said many times, there is no reason for Arkansas to play Arkansas State. It's almost because they want it so bad, and I'm all about perception. And if you're an SEC program, you don't need to start, quote, rivalries with Sun Belt teams or teams that are lower and then the Power 5. Now, you may find that too insulting. You may say that I'm looking at it in an arrogant way, and maybe I am, but that's just how I view it. Like, well, other teams play other teams inside the state. Yeah. What's your point? Arkansas, the state of Arkansas is very different. And besides, a lot of those cases, it's either because of the money or it's either because of the system. Because I don't have a problem with Arkansas playing UAPB in football. I have no problem with that. So it's not even just about in-state schools. But by doing that, the money stays within the U of A system. But people have always said, well, you keep the money in the state. That's a great, great approach. But folks, let's be real about this. If you are someone who is looking at it from the U of A's perspective, and you're looking at it in money, they're like, okay, so why would I want to give money to a school inside the state to play them in football and help them out when we want to be and continue to be the dominating school in this state? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it'd be one thing if you had a couple of other Power 5 schools in the state, and then, you know, it's like, hey, well, you know, what does that mean? You're really competing against that one other school. But Arkansas has no competition. So why would you try to create any competition? Why would you try to make anything be competition? There's no point to it. So those are the two things that widely get debated the most. And among the fan base, at least, inside the fan base. But I'm telling you, like after 2025, I will be hard pressed to think it ever happens. Now, who knows? Maybe 10, 15 years down the road, maybe you get some athletic director in that says like, oh, well, I'm good friends with the so-and-so over there in Jonesboro. Let's set it up. Like, of course, yeah, maybe that could happen. But I'm just telling you, as far as the idea that some people have had where they're like, this is going to be a yearly thing. It's not going to be a yearly thing whatsoever. It doesn't need to be a yearly thing whatsoever. So I know I went along in there, but that's okay because I'm going to push back the segments a little bit and then we'll talk more about the debates that happened outside the fan base, the Razorback fan base with other fan bases here in just a second. But first, I'm going to tell you about old eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and leveled up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so continuing on with the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, we'll get to Heston Kjerstad in a second, but I did want to bring up kind of the national perspective of the debates that Arkansas always has with other fan bases. Now, this is the one that's a little bit more unique because it depends on the fan base that you're arguing with, and that's just how it's going to be. A lot of places can have winning championships as their go-to thing, and that's great. That's true. But let's be honest, there's a lot of schools that just, there's only, so many you only have one champion every year. And so there's very few schools, like in football, for instance. The SEC is very dominant in it, but other than Bama, Georgia, and LSU, nobody's really been relevant in the national championship race over the past decade at all. So not Auburn, not Florida, like none of the other teams have. It's just really been those. And so like on the football side of things or in the basketball side of things or the baseball side of things, it's always just going to be kind of like picking what your strength is and holding on to that. And we talked about baseball, how it's getting a little bit more frustrating to deal with that. And Razorback fans are knowing that and feeling the pressure from it all. But it's also like in basketball, for instance, there were people that kept trying to put other schools above Arkansas in the SEC pecking order. Because let's be honest, when it comes to basketball programs, the number one program in the conference is Kentucky. It is. It has been, and it probably won't change for a very long time unless Kentucky really falls off the map. And that's not a debate. That's just fact. That's number one. Number two is Arkansas. All right? People can say what they want. Florida won back-to-back national titles. Okay, they had Billy Donovan win back-to-back national titles, and they've been pretty irrelevant ever since. And they were pretty irrelevant before he got there. So that's kind of how I have always viewed programs and their status. And I think it's usually, to me, it's the foolproof way of figuring it out. You can sit here and talk about titles and this, that, and the other. But as I've mentioned and as you've seen, there's programs that have had a lot of success, but it's because of one coach. It's not the program. It's just because you had an elite level coach for a stretch. And a great example of that is like Kansas. Kansas has had multiple great coaches. It's been a factory of different great coaches, and they've all had success. North Carolina, kind of the same thing. Kentucky, kind of the same thing. There are very few programs that have had, stretches of multiple great coaches, and Arkansas is one of them. Folks, do you know that Arkansas is the only team, and Kentucky, but those are the only teams in this conference that have at least two Naismith Hall of Fame coaches that have coached in their program? Arkansas now has three. They have Eddie Sutton, Nolan Richardson, and now John Calipari. Not to mention Eric Musselman, who's pretty good. Like, I'm not going to say he's a Hall of Famer, but he's pretty dadgum good. And of course, Kentucky had Adolph Rupp. They had Rick Pitino. They had John Calipari as well. So they've had success with that, and that's how I define programs. Is about that particular thing. How does it go? How does it look when you are a program that's had multiple Hall of Fame, high-level coaches? That's how you know where you stand as a program. And Arkansas stands right there at number 2 in this conference as a basketball program. They get the ratings, number 2 behind Kentucky. They have the support. They have a fan base. Like, there's so many places that if they got 10,000 people at a game, it would be a sellout. It'd be an incredible feat. Arkansas at Bud Walton Arena, if they have 10,000 people at a game, it's either one, the team is terrible and people are protesting, or an ice storm hit. Like, those are the only two ways that you're getting only 10,000 people in the stand. Double that is usually what they're going to have. Not many fan bases can have that. Not many fan bases have the support system, has the money, has the NIL, has the love, has the recruiting that the state of Arkansas has the ability to make the connections. Like, it is a bona fide, legendary, big-time program. It has all the amenities. But as I said before, it's not the programs that make the coaches. Sometimes the coaches make the program. That's absolutely right. But when you continue to have multiple Hall of Fame coaches, at some point in time, you got to say, okay, yes, it's about the coach, but it's also about that program being able to put those great coaches in positions to have the most success. Arkansas has proven that time and time again. And so they are the number 2 team in this conference in basketball, and I don't really think it's close. I hate to say it to all you fans out there that think that your program, your little cute program, anybody that says there is only one blue-blooded program in the SEC, and that's Kentucky. I'm not even saying Arkansas is a blue blood. So you at Auburn or you at Bama, or, you know, you people that found out you had a basketball team a couple years ago, you're not a blue blood. You don't even know what a blue blood is. If you say you're a blue blood, you're probably not a blue blood. So just relax. But I can't wait to see Calipari and what he does at Arkansas. Because let's be honest about this too. He wouldn't have gone to Auburn. He wouldn't have gone to Alabama. He wouldn't have gone to Tennessee. He wouldn't have gone to Florida. He wouldn't have gone to any of those other places. The only other program that he would have gone to in this conference is the one he's at right now, and it's Arkansas. You know how I know? Because he did. He did. He's here. And it still has rocked the college basketball world. So that's usually the debate that people get in, at least one of the most common ones outside the fan base. We could go on and on about this, but catch out the John Neighbors show. We'll go a little more in-depth into that here later down the road. But we're going to get into also the news from Heston Kjerstad. Promise you I'd talk about it. But we got to tell you about FanDuel, because I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have winded down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing as like I wanted them to. But FanDuel lets me keep all the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up on bets, and I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is looking to hook up all customers with a boost of a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, moving on into the final segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I'll get to that segment that we plan on going for the third one later. But I wanted to give a real quick shout out to Heston Kjerstad. You know, I used to remember Heston Kjerstad, one of the great Razorback baseball players. He started his freshman year in 2018, was a phenomenal freshman, was part of that World Series finals run. 2019, also part of that World Series. And then in 2020, we unfortunately got the season canceled because of COVID, but he was raking at the beginning of that season, and I still think that he's the Golden Spikes Award winner that year. I'm just going ahead and doing what Alabama does, you know, claiming titles. I'm claiming him as the Golden Spikes Award winner. But either way, he's had quite the journey. He was number 2 pick overall to the Orioles, and he dealt with some health issues, some heart issues, and it was really hindering him and keeping him from being able to advance. And there was some belief, not a lot of it, but some belief that he may not even be able to ever play because of the issues, which would have been just a sad and detrimental thing. But he battled through it, and he's worked his way up to the ranks, and now he's playing for the Orioles. And last night, he had a phenomenal game. He went 2 for 3 with a 2-run home run, a single, as well as a double with 3 RBIs and 2 runs scored. And it's like, I don't know, I see that, and I see him getting an interview and all that. I'm like, man, that is just such a great story. That is such a great story. And I love seeing people succeed, former Razorbacks succeed, but whenever they go through a really rigorous journey and trying to find their way, like, you know, he's been able to do, and just to settle in and be the player that everyone knew he's capable of. Like, that's just awesome. I mean, it's truly, truly awesome. And so I'm happy for him and any of the other pros that continue on. But yeah, and by the way, he was also a Tony Vitello kid. So just to let you know. But hopefully he keeps it up. Hopefully he keeps playing for the Orioles, and hopefully he continues to dominate and be the great baseball player. But I had to give a shout out to him because that was really awesome. Appreciate everybody listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Neighbors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel next Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll